Hey, Brian from SnakeBytes here. I'm down in South Florida at Tommy Crutchfield's place. Many people would agree he's one of the godfathers of the reptile community. We're going to go ahead and take a look at all of his awesome animals. You're watching SnakeBytes. One of the amazing things about South Florida collections are the outdoor pens. It's such an advantage to have, and I'm sitting with an amazing animal. This guy is named Roscoe. He's actually a Rhino Iguana. They're endemic to the island of Hispaniola, and it's estimated there's about 5,000 animals left. But fortunately, guys like Tom are breeding these readily in captivity, making these animals really just amazing to have it to the herpetoculture. And as you can see, as soon as I walked in, Roscoe just kind of stood up because he wants to be petted. As soon as you start petting him, he just closes his eyes and actually enjoys it. What an amazing creature this is. What was the first venomous snake that Brian ever handled? A, Gaboon Viper, B, inland taipan, or C, monocle cobra? Go ahead and comment down below with your guess and check back later in the show for the answer. You know, Tom, first I just wanted to thank you for having us down here, showing you this place. It's truly amazing. And obviously I wanted to ask you a little bit about just, you know, your adventure in reptiles over the last, what, 50 plus years?
It's been a long journey and it's been a fun time. I've seen things that I dreamed of doing. I actually got to live my dream, and sometimes feel like the luckiest guy in the world. And more importantly, is I'm retired and I still have reptiles and I still love them, and I guess I always will.
An animal that certainly benefits from outdoor caging are these diamond pythons. Now, first of all, this is a pure diamond python. The majority of diamond pythons that are represented in America are typically some sort of hybrid. Whether they have a little jungle blood or inland carpet in them, this is 100% pure diamond python, which is truly incredible. Now, with them being outdoors, they can thermoregulate tremendously. Believe it or not, they can get down into the mid-30s at night and up into the mid-90s during the day at times. And during the winter, they'll actually darken up so they can suck up the sun a lot more. And that thermoregulation is what causes the successful breeding. Now, this is really a treat. You guys know that I love the big pythons. This is one of the rarest of those animals. This is a Sri Lankan python. And just look at the color of that animal. These guys only get about 10 or 12 foot, and you really don't see them around hardly at all. They're endemic to Sri Lanka, and they used to actually be a subspecies of Indian python, but now they're their own pythons. And it's a little bit of a flighty animal, but just look at the color on its head, and what an amazing animal. Unfortunately, you very rarely ever see these animals available. It's really a shame that now, in most parts of the country, you can't even work with them anymore. It's just a shame that an animal like this will eventually probably be out of the hobby because no one's really breeding them anymore. But again, what an amazing experience to be able to hold something like this. Tom certainly has one of the most impressive epicrates collections I've ever seen. This happens to be a forage boa, which is known commonly as a Hispaniola ground boa. Now, this happens to be a really big female, so some of the rainbow boas and other animals can get really large, but as you can see, this is a small one. Believe it or not, something this size can have 10 or 15 babies, and again, this is the very first one that I've ever seen in person, so what a pleasure it is to mess with something like this. Well, you have so many beautiful things, and like you said, you've had so many adventures. Are there a couple things that stand out in that time?
Well, my first trip to Southeast Asia, my first trip around the world really, but Southeast Asia was a highlight. I went to Europe and Africa. I went to European roots, came back to Japan, and I tried to stay a week in Africa, Kenya, and I stayed a week in the Seychelles, and shipped back out there, a week in Sri Lanka, a week in Thailand, a week in Indonesia, and a few days in Hong Kong. And I got animals all along the way and shipped them back. So that was really exciting because in those days you could get the animals. They were there in the markets, in the food markets. I bought the snakes in Hong Kong, in Kowloon. And so it was my first trip around the world, so I'll always remember that.
As with most amazing animals, there's typically an amazing story behind them, and these albino iguanas are no different to that. Tommy bought the first albino iguanas back in the 1990s and then regretted selling them ever since. Well, about 6 years ago, he had the opportunity to buy some heads back, and the guy said there's no way that he was going to be able to breed them because he had attempted it for 9 years with no success whatsoever. Well, obviously, within 8 months, he produced 7 albinos. I think he proved them wrong. And these animals are just incredibly beautiful. And beyond popular belief, you can actually keep them out in the sun. Yeah, their eyes are a little bit sensitive, but you can see their skin stays perfectly fine in the sunlight. This guy's been out in the sun for 4 years. You can see it's certainly healthy. It's always a pleasure to handle something that I didn't even know existed before I got here. This is a Hispaniola Vine Boa, and again, I had never even heard of them before, let alone seen one in person. These very well could be the only ones in the country, and believe it or not, this is as big as they get. This animal could have up to 6 or 7 babies. You can only imagine how small the babies are, and I'm told they eat baby anoles when they're little guys, so wow, it's just a really cool snake. In that time when you started out, you know, really pioneering the reptile community, did you see it going as far as we've come? I mean, where it's gotten now? I mean, what's your thoughts on that journey that the reptile hobby has taken in that time?
I like it. It's good and bad, though. When I started, we were all in it because we loved reptiles, because there was no money in it, really. I mean, none of us had any money, and everybody else hated reptiles. Now reptiles are mainstream America because of basically of captive breeding. And everybody likes reptiles, kind of. There's probably as many reptiles in households almost as tropical fish this day and age. So it's really evolved, and we've learned how to breed really rare things. I mean, back when I was breeding stuff, back before people cared, not for money, just, and I bred Indian pythons and Burmese pythons back in the day and things like that. But to breed frogs and all the things they breed now, we never dreamed we could even do that back then. We just didn't have the technology. We had no vitalites then.
Right.
Or anything like that. So we just had to provide really good heat for the animals, because really and truly the vitamin D synthesis is really more important than heat than the vitalites, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm sure in those early days, especially when you produced a clutch of, say, Indian pythons, you really probably didn't have any idea what to do with the eggs, right?
No, we traded them. Well, we hatched them, but what we did, we were trading with each other. We didn't have money, not any of us, but some of us had animals, others didn't, and we would trade.
I think sometimes we get used to talking about Brazilian rainbows and Colombian rainbows when we're talking about evercrates, and we forget how many beautiful animals there are of that genus that we hardly ever see. Well, this Jamaican boa happens to be one of those animals. Look at this amazingly colored animal. Now, she happens to be gravid, and she's probably going to have 30 to 35 babies, but unfortunately, they're very endangered, and you can't sell them across state lines. And that's really one of the reasons why you rarely see these animals. But man, just having the opportunity to handle something like this, it's just completely blown me away. Now, this is an amazing animal. This is a Ming Vipir. It's endemic to only a 60 square kilometer area in the Ming Mountains, and it was only described in the 1990s. Prior to that, it was known as the Iron Head or the Little Green Dragon, and people that lived there knew for centuries that this animal existed, but it was only just described. And again, what an amazing animal, and you can only imagine that with such a small range, these guys are certainly extremely rare and extremely beautiful. What I have here is a prehensile tailed skink from the Solomon Islands, Kirusha Subrata. Now, these are amazing animals because they have live young and only will have one baby a year. On rare occasion, they may have twins. But unfortunately, there's some major issues in the Solomon Islands with deforestation, and there's a good chance that these animals may actually go extinct natively. So it's very important for breeding colonies like Tom's here for the species survival of these animals. Now, guys, I can't tell you how amazing it's been to visit Tom Crutchfield's place. It's been a dream of mine since I was about 15 years old, and I'm finally here, and I gotta tell you, it certainly didn't disappoint. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did.
All right, you guys saw that Brian got to go play with all sorts of dangerous, crazy, venomous snakes. That's stuff that we don't work with here at all. I want to know, if you could describe venomous keepers in one word, what would it be? Crazy? Adventurous? Brave? Foolish? Leave a comment below and let us know.
So there it is. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. What an amazing time I had down at Tom's, but it's always good to be back home. If you guys want to follow any of my animal adventures, make sure to hit me up over on Facebook and Twitter at SnakeBytesTV. Till next week, you've been watching Snake Bites. What was the first venomous snake that Brian ever handled? If you said A, Gaboon Viper, you had it right. Good job. But these little creatures with legs are a little bit interesting, but they really breed the same way as colubrids or most of our other boas and pythons. You just have to get the male and the female at the right time. This happens to be a male, and you can kind of see that because it has what they call femoral port.